Hello my loves, and welcome back to this here little bookish corner of the internet. Today is a video that I've been meaning to film for a minute, and that is a discussion. Did I say a film? No, I said a video. Today is a video that I've been meaning to film for a minute, and that is a discussion of this whole Bailey's, not Bailey's Women's Prize situation, in honour of the not Bailey's Prize that I keep calling the Bailey's Prize. It is not the Bailey's Prize anymore. I have a cocktail that is not Bailey's. It's just a White Russian. I just brushed my teeth and that tastes gross, but it will taste good in a minute. So I'm not going to waste time because we have a lot of books to discuss. I thought it would make the most sense, since the shortlist came out yesterday, the day before, can't even remember what year it is, let alone the day of the week, that we would start by discussing the books that I have read out of the 6 on the shortlist, and beyond that my thoughts, and then we can discuss some of the books that I've read that were on the long list but did not make the shortlist. So I should tell you now, if you don't know what the long list is, or if you are Adam from Memento Mori and don't care about book prizes, you should not watch this video, or just watch it. It would make me happy. You guys, I think we should start with the worst and get it out of the way. It's not often that I give an actually bad review on this channel. Like, a lot of the time I try and find the good in books because I know how much work goes into it by the author, and I know how book tastes vary. This one is going to be very difficult for me because I have very little of worth / goodness to say about it, so we'll keep it short. That is The Idiot by Elif Batuman. This follows 18-year-old Selin as she's in her first year of college studying linguistics and Russian literature, and it's kind of just that for 450 pages. She gets into a romance with a guy called Ivan who's in one of her Russian classes. There's also a bunch of secondary characters who are in her dorm and in her other classes, and the whole thing happens during the year 1995, where email is a new thing, and she and Ivan kind of embark on this romance / long extended conversation by email, which is kind of novel and exciting to them, and then they end up taking a journey in the second half of the book together to a different country, in this case Hungary. Beyond that, no plot to speak of. Not usually an issue for me. I don't really mind plotless books as long as the writing takes me on a journey, which in this case it didn't. I will say that there's a lot of lines that made me laugh out loud, especially close to the beginning, so I really did have some hope in kind of the first 50 pages. But largely it's these vignettes of college life, which would be fun for maybe 50 to 100 pages if they weren't so meandering and frankly eye-wateringly boring. Like, it's so dull, it's unbelievable. And I think the main thing that frustrated me was the fact that Selin, Ivan, even the secondary characters who are slightly more memorable, are so one-dimensional, it's almost a joke. Like, the entire purpose of the existence of these characters is so that Miss Batuman can insert herself forcefully into her own narrative and make the points that she wants to make about language and Russian literature. I actually don't think that the points she was making were worth 450 pages of my attention, and I think that there are lots of more interesting things to say about language. I am not a huge connoisseur of Russian literature, so maybe if I had been, I would have gotten more out of this book. But I don't ask for much as a reader, apart from some modicum of respect if you're going to make me pay attention to what you're writing for 450 pages, and that involves not just writing a novel for the sake of being able to proselytize for so long about your beliefs about language and Russian literature. So there you go. Either I missed out on something super profound and intellectual about this novel, or it's just not that good. I was inclined for a while to believe the first one because I am definitely not the most intelligent person in the world, and I think that I could easily have missed something, and I suppose if it has made the shortlist then arguably I have. But I also know of a lot of people who have not enjoyed this novel, so yeah, definitely a miss for me. I almost DNF'd, and if I was capable of DNFing I definitely would have done, but I was hoping to change my mind and did not, so that I don't understand. Next let's talk, oh my gosh, that is the second time I've tried to say that. Next, let's talk about Sight by Jessie Greengrass. I had not heard of Jessie Greengrass, and that is because this is a debut novel, and I can reassure you that I much enjoyed this novel relative to The Idiot, and really in general. This is a tiny book, very slight, 200 pages, read it on my Kindle. And I wouldn't say it's a novel in the traditional sense. It is supposedly fictional. We follow an unnamed female narrator who's kind of navigating whether or not she wants to have a child. The novel kind of jumps in time periods, so we see her sometime after her mother's death, dealing with grief and issues of loss and life after death and all of those things, and how to take care of an ailing and sick relative. We follow her as a child and the relationship she has with her grandmother, who was a psychoanalyst. We also follow her as she's pregnant with her first child, and then as a mother to her first child, and whether or not to get pregnant with her second. So it kind of jumps around. And when I say it's not a novel in the traditional sense, I mean because to me, if I had been told it was non-fiction, I would not have been surprised. I would say it reads more like an extended essay than a novel, in the sense that it doesn't really have the traditional arc of plot. Now, I think that that is a good thing. I'm always down for books that play with form slightly. And boy, does Jessie Greengrass know how to write an extended essay or a novel or whatever it was she decided to do, because her mastery of language is really quite phenomenal. It's super dense, almost sometimes academically so, and she really takes your hand and trusts you to follow her along these kind of long sentences populated by a lot of commas and a lot of ideas and a lot of things that link together. And sometimes, especially at the beginning, it can feel confusing and almost a bit gatekeepery because it's so different maybe to what you expect. But to me, the payoff was incredibly satisfying. The subtlety with which she kind of links together ideas and thematic elements of the book is really exquisite, and the things that she has to say about the kind of process of self-examination and looking inwards, she links everything to do with her life to women of history, and specifically women who were alongside famous men. So we learn a lot about the man who invented the X-ray, or at least was instrumental to inventing the X-ray. Then we speak about Freud, because her grandmother, I see it, I'm saying the author's grandmother. It wasn't necessarily. The narrator's grandmother was a psychoanalyst, so we do spend a bit of time back in the day in the 1800s with Freud, but we don't really follow Freud as such as much as his youngest of 6 children, his daughter Anna Freud. So I kind of liked those parts. They were more academic and probably denser, and obviously had less of a story to them, but I like the idea that we took these famous instrumental men in history and kind of followed the forgotten women alongside them. That really spoke to me. And at the end of the day, you have all these strands that kind of seem quite separate, maybe for the first 75, 90 pages of the novel, and then slowly, almost too slowly for you to realize it, they're kind of being braided together and interwoven. And when you get to the end, you end up with this nice package, and you end up with a lot of very philosophical, very profound, very original ideas about this process of self-examination and this process of sight in so many ways. And also, of course, you learn and understand more about motherhood and what it is to be a mother in all stages, when your own children are looking after you when you get old, and when you first become a mother, when your children are babies. And so I thought it was so interesting. I thought it was super brave, and I really, really enjoyed reading it. What is next? The other one I've read on the shortlist was one of my favourite books of 2017. I read it before it was longlisted and shortlisted, and that is Sing Unburied Sing by Jessie Ward. This is my first Jessie Ward, and honestly I could make a whole video about it, and I may yet, so I'll try and keep this as brief as possible. We follow a cast of characters. We begin by following 13-year-old Jojo, whose mother, Leonie, is a black woman who is struggling with a drug addiction problem. She's a crack addict, and they are living in the American South with Jojo's grandparents, and Jojo's father is white, so he is mixed race, and his father currently finds himself in prison. So the novel starts when Jojo's father calls up his wife to tell her that he is being released from prison, and the entire novel goes from there, and it is centered around this road trip that Jojo's mother takes with Jojo and his little sister to go and collect their father from prison. And it would take me 3 videos and probably less alcohol and more thought to tell you about all the incredible subtleties of this book and all the ways that it took my breath away, quite apart from the fact that this road trip conceit is turned on its head by Ward to become this kind of mirroring of the fact that Jojo's father is stuck in prison, and really the car becomes the prison for this group who's going to get him from freedom. Quite apart from the subtleties of that and the way that it is explored throughout the book, these characters jump off the page in a way that is complex and multi-layered, and the book doesn't tell you who to like and who to not like. Leonie in particular is a very complicated character. She's not maternal by any means. She's honestly quite a bad mother because she is struggling so profoundly with her drug addiction. She even decides to take a friend on the road trip along with her, a friend that she does drugs with, so that they can stop along the way and do a drug deal. And she takes her kids into these crack dens, and it is sad and harrowing and awful. And yet I wasn't without sympathy for her, even though I absolutely hated her in parts. There's also this element of the novel that is almost magical realism. We have some ghosts showing up. For example, Leonie, one of the reasons why she takes drugs, Leonie being the mother, is that it enables her to see her brother who she has lost, who she is grieving, who was shot and who died in frankly terrible circumstances. And the exploration of that kind of gives a 3-dimensionality to this addiction problem that she's experiencing. And that's not even to mention the portrayal of these children and how wonderful it is, and the portrayal of these grandparents and how sympathetic that is, and the fact that the language is some of the most beautiful I've ever written, that it's cloying, that it's claustrophobic, just like the sensation of being in that car, but that it's also poetic and real and true, and I just loved it. I mean, it's one of President Obama's favorite books of 2017, so I'm glad that President Obama and I share this favorite book. I loved it. It's funny, I recommended it to my dad and he also really liked it, but he said that the character of the mother, Leonie, was very, very difficult for him to read, and I don't think he felt quite the sympathy for her that I did, but it's led to some very interesting conversations. I was worried at first about the kind of magical realism element of it because I don't usually like magical realism that much. But Ward does most things with genius, if not all things, and it didn't feel jarring, and I bought it, and the way that it was kind of interlaced into the narrative worked perfectly for me. So very, very much deserving of being on the shortlist. I hope it wins. It's got my vote, other than if I get taken away by another book that I haven't read yet. I realised that I forgot to light the candles, which is super against the hygge bilingual bookworm aesthetic. By the way, those of you who can figure out what's different about my setup this week, I'll give you a virtual pat on the back. I don't know. What will I give you? Just smiles, lots of smiles. So what is different about my setup this week? Anyway, the candles are lit now, so we can continue. I've made a radical decision. I was going to talk to you about the books on the long list that didn't make the shortlist that I have read. I'm going to give you like 2-word reviews for those at the end of this video, and then I'm going to make a longer video about those, because otherwise it's going to be a super long video. And although I'm already known for super long videos, I think even for me that would be excessive. So for now, let's continue. I have read those 3 off of the shortlist, hated one of them, loved one of them, liked one of them. Now what are my plans for the rest of the shortlist? Yesterday I got in the post When I Hit You, or The Portrait of the Writer as a Young Wife by, I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name, Mina Kandasamy, which I am super excited about. So many people I respect have absolutely loved this book, so I feel like it might make up for my disastrous experience with The Idiot. I hear that it's like vignette-y, that it deals with some very difficult subjects, but that the voice is, whilst being harrowing, also quite humorous in like a really pitch black kind of way, and I love that stuff, so I'm excited. I've been waiting for a long time. It's been sent from London and now I have it, so I will definitely be reading that. The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock by, I've got an ad for something, I'm sorry, I know I'm the worst host. The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock by Imogen Hermes Gower, which again, Adam from Memento Mori has ruined that name forever for me. I'm going to need your convincing. If you have read The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock, please sell it to me, especially if you've enjoyed it, because right now I don't really have any plans to read it. It doesn't super seem like my type of book, but feel free to prove me wrong. And then last but not least on the shortlist is Home Fire by, for goodness sakes, is Home Fire by Camila Shamsi, which I'm super excited about. It is a retelling of Antigone, which is apparently really subtle and well done. It takes place in modern Britain and it follows a Muslim family. And again, I hear only good things. So I feel like by the time that I've read both of those that I plan to read, I may have very positive thoughts about this shortlist overall. I feel like it encompasses a whole breadth of topics. I'm excited by the fact that it's full of women of colour. I'm excited by the fact that we are seeing a lot of different cultural viewpoints and that the writing styles seem so different and varied. I'm excited. I am sad about some of the things that didn't make the shortlist, and that brings me nicely on to the ones that I have read from the long list, which I will make a longer video about. But should we try this one-word review thing? Okay, let's try. The most recent one that I finished, and you can probably tell from my face the way I felt about it, is Kit de Waal's The Trick to Time. And the word I will choose to describe it is kind. The second one that I read off the long list, which did not make the short list, is the oft lauded, oft spoken about Eleanor Oliphant Is Completely Fine. The one word that I will give you for this, by the way, it's from Gail Honeyman, by Gail Honeyman. I literally cannot booktube today. The one word that I will give you for this is conflicted. What do we have next? Yeah, well remembered. You know what I read more than I do.
I bought it for you with your money.
Yes, true. The last one-word review is for Elmit by Fiona Mosley, which if you watch my last book haul, which was my last video, which was when my darling husband bought me my books, you will have seen it. By the way, thank you so much for the response on that video. It was the most fun we've ever had shooting and people loved it. I'm glad that it came across. The word for Elmit, man, that's difficult. I would say accomplished. And then the rest I have just reviewed. So I would say The Idiot was trash. No, that's a little extreme. But anyway, I'm not going to give one-word reviews for the ones that I just spent ages reviewing. So for now, I will love you and leave you. You will see me back in these same clothes for my next video, and we will discuss the ones that didn't make the shortlist that I just gave you one-word reviews for, and I will give you some more words reviews of them. Okay, I'm gonna go and carry on drinking my Not Bailey's cocktail and pretend that this is a separate video when actually it's just me sitting in front of the same camera, staring at the same view. Bye guys, love you. Adios.